want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new. A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Because it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights, to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you'll cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy,
Welcome to my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A very stormy Pennsylvania and Lehigh Valley today. Part of these United States, North American continent, Western Hemisphere, on this planet Earth, the only one we have, third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect live with you for the 9th of July, 2023. We hope and trust that you all had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. That is Daisy the dog barking at potentially me, because it seems like when I'm up here and she can hear me but can't see me, it tends to make her a bit upset. So we might have a little bit of background barking throughout the program, but guess what? As you all well know, I do the program from my own humble home, so that stuff's gonna happen. I think I've told you too in some of the past retrospectives, if you will, of the program that we've done, anniversary shows and such, special guests, things like that, that some of my favorite memories of this program are exactly those moments when the cat walks across the keyboard, or the dogs bark in the background, or even the good stuff when the dogs come in to say hello because they're just lonely and they want to be taken care of and they want to be paid attention to. It's some of my favorite things that have ever happened on this program. Let me get to a bit of business quickly. I came up into the studio probably over an hour early to get everything set up. There's some things I did need to reboot after 2 weeks, connect some wires, things like that, readjust some lights a little bit that have been bumped around, as we live in this home. And since I've been using the Restream program, I don't normally have to log on as early as I used to have to do. And here we go on what's a really important program, I think. I've done my promotions for the program very early. I'm usually very don't want to say I'm lazy about it, but doing the promotions that I do for the program is exceptionally time consuming. It's a few hours a week just to do promotions, to let you know when we're on, what we're going to be talking about, and the like. And so I did that early this week because I am and have been extremely excited about the gentleman who's going to be joining us at his convenience, and that is former Representative Joe Walsh. And so now I've learned through trying to do the Facebook sharing that I appear to have been blocked dead in the middle of it, which is always exciting, that when you have something planned, you've planned for it, that something is going to go pear-shaped, and it appears that it has. I'm not quite sure, to be honest, what the problem is. But I appear to be blocked in a number of the groups that I tried to share to. And so what else is new? I think the quicker that I stop using Facebook, probably the better. And if in fact, I'm responding to a gentleman right now. Just the and the funny thing of this is, and it's not funny, haha funny, it's annoying funny. Look, I get it. Meta owns Facebook. It's theirs. Everything that we put there, they own. It's not, we think of it as ours. It isn't really ours. We just think of it that way, but it isn't. And so and the interesting thing is that I can see what I've posted. Other folks are kind enough to tell me that they cannot see it. I can see it. So that makes the mystery even deeper. But I understand that, what we share to Facebook is owned by Facebook. And I get that. Truly and honestly, I do get that. But that said, if there was any consistency in this, I'd be thrilled to know what it is, why it is. During the show promotions, when I was sharing out show promotions, I was alerted in the midst of it. When I was sharing out show promotions, in the midst of my show promotions, that I was blocked yet again. You've been restricted. But what I had the chance to do is I got this code received to me. I verified that I, in fact, am the person doing what I'm doing, and the block was immediately lifted. Now, today, no such luck. So I would strongly, to anybody who can still hear me or see me, I would direct you to two places. My own personal timeline, Jeff Kennedy, it's there. Randall's watching right now. It's there. I would also point you to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thatothersideofinformation. And it would appear that given the schedules, work and life schedules that George and I have to endure, because it's just part of life, and that we might have to take a hell of a long time off and try and sort some of this out. Or I'm just going to have to start paying Restream and start going to other places other than Facebook. But these are very first world problems, aren't they? I mean, if you're struggling to figure out what the kids are going to eat for dinner tonight, then everything that I'm talking about is a very, very shallow issue in life, isn't it? I mean, it's a very, very, it's just not a big problem, is it? and believe me, I know it. I absolutely know it. I get it. I properly get it. But if, at least if you do what I do, these things are so terribly important. And when you don't know that they are going to happen until they happen. So how do I know that I'm going to get blocked from sharing my humble face for radio with you until it happens? And the truth is that I don't. I don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And that's the stinky part, is that I don't know. And that I don't know, it just isn't gonna, I don't know that it's gonna happen until it happens. The only other thing that I could do is, as I, vamp and speak to you extemporaneously, would be to start sharing hours early, but then that just leaves hours and hours of dead video that nobody wants to look at. I remember a couple weeks ago, I got a comment from a gentleman who legitimately tried to check out our program, and he didn't mean anything. I don't believe he meant anything derogatory in the comment, but he just said, "Wow, look at you pushing buttons and staring at nothing." I kind of agreed. Like, I got it. Like, I understood. He got a little barred with the watching me share stuff, but I have to do that before I go live. It's just part of it. So, very frustrated tonight, but hey, here we go. Let's kick it off. The man himself is here. Let me get through the business end of the program. Wherever you might be across the Facebook universe, if you can still see us, because of course Facebook has decided to block us yet again. We are at our home. Go to my timeline. Jeff Kennedy, we're there. I can see it. I believe we're there. Check us out. You can also go live right now to our YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. But wherever you might be across the Facebook universe, if you have allowed us to be there, then we thank you. We couldn't do it without you. Every single individual group, public group, private group, page, you name it. We could not be here if you are not there. So we thank you, and please feel free to check out our home group Facebook page anytime, 24/7, not just when we're live on the air. That Other Side of Information. To our sisters and brothers and friends and family at hot101.net, it is a thrill and an honor to be back with you yet again. The pillar, the keystone, one of the originators of global internet radio, hot101.net. If you don't know how to listen to hot101.net, then you haven't been listening to me. That's for darn sure, but I will tell you yet again, if you can connect to the internet anywhere on this humble blue planet of ours, you can listen to hot101.net. Apple App Store, Google Play Store for our apps, and the TuneIn radio app. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, and of course, the TCP Media Group. I have told you, if you've been listening to my program for the 4+ years that we've been on now, that I rarely get nervous. I've been doing radio and television since I was in high school. It doesn't bother me. I love public speaking. Most people will tell you they can't get me to shut up. But I love it. I love radio. I love the old, if you will, old, in quotes, medium of radio. And even though there is a video aspect of this program, it is a radio program at its heart. And I rarely get nervous because at the end of the day, you know that our program is very, very casual. It's very... we talk about serious stuff, but we try to do it with a smile, with a bit of lightheartedness, with a casualness and a sense of community and camaraderie. And I very rarely get nervous, but I am tonight because the gentleman who agreed to join me tonight did it without any reservation, any hesitation, any send me a bio, send me how many people listen, and it's some of the stuff that I will normally get from other people. He doesn't know me from a hole in the wall, and yet is coming to share his time with us on a Sunday evening. And what's even more important than that, in my estimation, and I think, and I hope that it will come out as the conversation proceeds, is that he is exactly the type of people, and I am exactly the type of people that need to be talking to each other right now. I am not just distant member of this family. I am a progressive in every way, shape, and form. Mr. Walsh is a Republican, and we are exactly the kind of people in the state of this country right now that need to be talking to each other and not necessarily agreeing maybe on anything, but talking to each other. We're not talking to each other. And that lack of communication has been encouraged. And it's exactly why we're here today. So let me please very humbly welcome the host of White Flag with Joe Walsh, former candidate for President of the United States on the Republican ticket in 2020, and former member of the esteemed House of Representatives from the 8th Congressional District of Illinois. All the info is running along the bottom of the screen, and that is Joe Walsh. Mr. Walsh, I am very, very humbled and grateful that you would be willing to come and share your time with a humble, small program like ours. Thank you.
Don't you dare be humble, Jeff. It's good to be with you. Don't you dare be nervous. And look, I'm a former radio guy. You're a much more experienced radio guy than me. Good to be with you.
Well, let me start with the same question that we start with all brand new guests on our program. It is intentionally vague because I want you to answer it how you feel to answer it before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything. This Irish guy, and Walsh, I should say, is Welsh, if I'm not mistaken. Who is Joe Walsh, and how did you get here?
Like you, I'm an Irishman. What am I, Jeff? I'm right now, I'm a reformed gangbanger. I'm a reformed MAGA cult member. And for the past 5 to 6 years, I've been kind of in the wilderness, right? I'm one of these never Trump conservatives trying to find my place in this crazy political era that we live in.
Let's try to trace the history of this if we can, just a little bit. The original deference or split, if you will, between Republicans and Democrats traditionally in the United States was Democrats tend to feel that government can do anything that the Constitution does not specifically permit you or prohibit you from doing. Republicans traditionally would believe that you can only do what the Constitution specifically says that you can. And then it seems to me from this student of history, and by no means any type of professor or expert in it, that it was really after the New Deal and the hatred of the New Deal and the solutions that came of the New Deal to what was referred to up until the early 1950s, the Republican Great Depression, and then on into the Kennedy administration with, a lack of willingness to, or at least I should say a willingness to fix mistakes like cutting taxes on the top percentage, get us out of Vietnam before it came what it became, massive spending on the space program, and then into the Nixon era of Justice Powell being appointed to the court. And how did we get here from we don't agree to the New Deal to we have absolutely no agenda whatsoever other than what the people that own us tell us to do?
Because, Jeff, the voting base of my former political party, the Republican Party, has become completely radicalized. If you and I were speaking 15 years ago or 35 years ago, we'd probably have a really interesting conversation / debate about issues. We're not there now. My party right now my former party has no interest in that. My former party right now, Jeff, is solely focused on, I believe they've given up on our democracy, and they're solely focused on doing whatever they have to do to destroy their political enemies and get back the America they think they want. That's where we're at now.
This might seem like a stupid retort, but is it really that simple?
Yeah.
Is the Republican dreaded air quotes, beware the dreaded air quotes, party really a functional political party at this point? Or is it what I have been referring to it here for, I think, several years now, a corporation? The employees are the members of Congress, state legislatures, governors, attorneys general, and the owners, the Koch network, the Mercers, Jeffrey Yass right here in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Peter Thiels, and I could go on and on and on. Is it really a functioning political party at this point, or is it just a corporation?
Well, it's an interesting thought, Jeff, because you
And
could,
maybe it's semantics. I'm willing to admit. Maybe it's a semantical argument.
yeah, and you could say much of the same about the Democratic Party, in that, only in this regard, wealthy corporate interests tend to have great influence in both parties in politics, and it's always been that way. I think what's different now is I don't refer to the Republican Party as a corporation. I really do refer to it as a cult. Um, and I've done that for a while now because it's no longer really beholden to corporate interest or policy interest. It's beholden to one man and what that one man is for them.
He's got a lot of billionaire backing, though, and isn't this a bit of the bird in the hand type show, or the distracting the child in the doctor's office from the impending inoculation coming in? Here, look at this, look at this, look at this. That if we're so focused on, my goodness, a trans person might have to use a bathroom, or a person in drag might actually read a story to my child in a library, or the fact that we even have public libraries, and why are we paying for such terribly socialist things? And that $55 trillion in tax cuts to the top 1%, just the income tax cuts, since the onset of the Reagan era, is somehow not enough. But yet, good for you if all of this wealth is concentrated at the top. If we're constantly looking at the shiny object, can we still feel the hand in our back pocket taking what's left of us with them?
Again, Jeff, that's interesting. I can tell you that most of the millionaires and the billionaires in the Republican Party, they want Trump gone. They're not fans of Trump, and they don't necessarily really even give Trump any money anymore. They'd like somebody else to be their nominee. But I get your general gist in that the party's focus on these culture war issues, I would argue, is real because I come from the base of the party. And when you talk to base voters, they're much more concerned about 64 different genders, or what our kids are being taught when it comes about slavery, than they are issues of taxes and regulation. This is what animates the base. So DeSantis and the others feed it to them.
Do you think that Mr. DeSantis... I lived in the New York metropolitan area about half my life. We knew a really long time ago exactly not just who, but what Donald Trump is and or was.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've said on the program before, so all of you cannot be too shocked. We tried to tell you. Okay, we tried to tell you, but because it was the quote-unquote liberal bastion of Manhattan, no one listened. We've all known this. On the program 2 weeks ago, I took about a half hour to discuss what the Republican House had done that past week. They introduced legislation to expunge the impeachments of Donald Trump, which most constitutional scholars, including conservative ones, think is blindly unconstitutional. And they censured Adam Schiff. So this lot can't even do the old-fashioned stuff, Mr. Walsh, like try to cut taxes on rich people or eliminate corporate taxes or some, bogus sort of legislation about let's eliminate and shut down the Environmental Protection Agency. This is all that's left. So what I am constantly fascinated, even as a member of this family and a student of history and politics, and God help me, it's killing me slowly, but I do love politics. I am at least mystified, at most disconnected with what a solid 30, 35, maybe even 40% of the population is seeing in this party right now. What is it? What are they seeing in Republicanism that keeps them voting not just against their own self-interest, but I'm not sure I could list the number of interests that are being ill-served?
And Jeff, it's 40, and I think it's probably north of 40%. What is driving and animating the party now is a sense of revenge. And
but
you know this.
What? From what? The New Deal? From the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act? From what?
You could probably go back and throw that all together, and you could kind of summarize it like this. And remember, Jeff, when we talk about the base of the Republican Party, we're talking about middle-aged and older white folk, and
a minority of the country.
Yeah, they are angry about how quickly the country has changed in their mind. This is what they tell me. And they've been angry for a long time about how they believe the left dominates so many institutions. The left dominates the media, has dominated the media, has dominated academia, has dominated popular culture, has dominated Hollywood, has dominated big business, has dominated politics. So along comes Trump. He's their hammer of revenge to try to pound all of these institutions and take back a semblance of kind of the America that they mythically thought they had in like the 1950s. This is what I hear a lot.
It's interesting that you said that. I have mentioned on this program before, it's become way too much I think of just a throwaway sort of phrase. We create an awful lot of throwaway phrases, especially in the political arena where we have such short memories. And where so many of folks in the political arena seem to forget that video and social media exist, where your stuff kind of can't just disappear, and you can't really lie about it and disconnect yourself from it. But that one of those throwaway memes to me has been that the Republicans want to take us back to the 50s. I agree, but I think it might be the 1850s. Am I wrong? Or is there some of that? Do you actually see some of that?
Well, this is some, but mainly what I hear, Jeff, is, and so maybe it could be the 1850s and 1950s, whenever they were a child, they yearn for an America where life was simpler. Men were men, women were women, men married women, women married men. You could say Merry Christmas. The local plant was in town. Nobody came into the country illegally. We were a Christian country. We were mostly a white country. Everything was as it should be. That's a crude summary of, you pick your time when that ever existed.
Were we ever that country?
Well, we were certainly a whiter country.
Agreed.
I think that's part of this. In many of their minds, we were a more overtly Christian country back in the day, whatever that means.
Even though the Treaty of Tripoli specifically states that we were not, and are.
Oh, completely,
right. Yeah.
Completely. But I will tell you, Jeff, and again, I come from the base. These were my people. there's a segment of this population that wants America to be a Christian theocracy. That's real.
Right. And they're not too far away from winning that war, to be honest. I always love when I love whenever I speak to conservatives, either on this program, and by the way, you are listening. I know you're out there because I get the death threats, so I know you're out there. When you bring up such a thing as that, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but something as such a minor factual piece of history as the Treaty of Tripoli, they just want to lose their brains. I'm a Christian myself. I'm not going to tell you that I spend 8 days a week in mass. I don't. But in the privacy of my head and my heart, I have my conversations with the Almighty, and I ask him for help, or her for help, and I ask for guidance, and just sometimes just some peace and quiet to calm my brain and to calm my nerves or my stress or whatever it might be. But even Christ said that we talk to the masses, we don't proselytize to them. That it's the I almost said the I word. It's the forcing of people into this, that where the separation of church and state was born. I've often told the story here that one of the great debates that happened in the Continental Congress and the Constitutional Congress was the argument over two little words, of and from. That Madison and Jefferson wanted freedom from religion, not just freedom of, and that Massachusetts and the southern colonies wouldn't allow it because they thought we'd be creating a godless country. When you sit back, perhaps as a man of faith yourself, and if you are, it's none of my business, and if you're not, it's none of my business. I've actually had clergy on the program repeatedly just to talk about the twisted, bad word alert, bastardization of religion. Does it shock you? Does it scare you?
Yes. Yes.
The radio guy who talks too much and the man of few words. What a mix.
Jeff, it does. These folks, the base of the Republican Party, they elected me and they sent me to Congress. They listened to me on the radio when I was on the radio all over the country. They listened to me when I was on Fox News. This was the base of my support. Good people, but confused people and angry people and bitter people and scared people. And the problem, Jeff, is the problem with these people, the base of the Republican Party is this. They had these fears. They've had these fears and concerns and angers for a long time. The party establishment ignored them. I mean, ignored them. And then, Jeff, you've heard me say this publicly, Tea Party people like me came along and we helped inflame them and rile them up. So by the time Trump got here, the demagogue that Trump is, he just sort of tapped into these people and he said, I'm going to build a wall and keep brown and black people out. And man, that was it. They were hooked. So we're all to blame on the Republican side, Jeff, for not dealing with the base and educating them a long, long time ago, because now it's metastasized well beyond Trump, and it is now the animating force in the Republican Party.
I think this question might be a bit too plain and obvious. I hope you'll forgive me. But as an example of, I think, what we're discussing right at this very moment, could a John McCain exist in this party right now? I think about him in 2000 running for president, and again in 2008. In 2000, you know that Senator McCain did a lot of he excelled very well at the town hall medium of meeting voters, as Elizabeth Warren did in 2020. He excelled very much at that. He wasn't the greatest speech maker in the world, by his own admission, by the way, but in that town hall sort of thing, in that town hall sort of medium, he seemed to flourish. And I remember in 2000, somebody asking him about isn't this climate change thing just a big hoax? And he said, okay, let's talk about that. Let's assume you're right, that the entire thing is just a joke and a hoax and so on and so on and so on. If you could put a solar panel on your roof and we could stop buying oil from the Saudis, wouldn't that be a good thing? And the whole play, okay, yeah, that's okay, great. And I think about 2008, you know full well, it's one of the most viral clips ever. The older woman standing up talking about how Barack Obama was a Muslim and hated this country and he's a terrorist and all that. And he took the mic back. He said, no, you're just wrong. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. I'm sure you're a lovely woman, but everything you just said was incorrect. He's a good man. He's a family man. He loves this country the same way I do. We just have different views on the issues. Could a man like that exist in Republicanism today?
And I'm not being cagey, Jeff. McCain could only exist in the Republican Party if he supported Trump. That's the dividing line. I'm still a proud libertarian Tea Party guy. I oppose Donald Trump publicly and everything he stands for, so there's no room in the party for me. Same goes for Liz Cheney and my friend Adam Kinzinger, who I got elected with. If you oppose Trump and Trumpism, there's no room in the party, and it doesn't matter where you are on the issues. It doesn't matter if you're moderate or conservative. The criteria is you have to embrace this man and Trumpism. John McCain couldn't exist in this party because if he were still alive, he'd call out Trump. He'd oppose Trump publicly. So he'd be done he could never get elected again. He'd be done as a Republican.
Why is the party forgotten about Republicans like Dwight Eisenhower and John McCain? And I'm sure I remember the reason I reached out to you. I'm ruining my own question. I'm gonna forget my own damn question. The reason I reached out to you is I think I tweeted to you just a couple days after you were on CNN with our former congressman here in the Lehigh Valley, Charlie Dent. Oh. I don't know if you remember that. Or no, you were on with Ali Velshi. It was Ali Velshi, whom I watch religiously. I don't know why the man isn't the biggest news personality in the country. I've never seen anybody more relaxed on camera, and I wish I could be that way. And as authoritative about what she speaks. That said, I'm an abashed fan of Mr. Velshi, and you're welcome to come here anytime. That said, the two of you were kind of taking the same argument, but it seemed to me that you were willing to go places the former Representative Dent was not. Yes, we both spoke against Trump. I get that. But Representative Dent seemed to take the position that here's how we can rescue our party. Here's how we can take back our party. And your point was there's no party left to take back, Charlie. Like you got to come on over, come with me. You're talking about saving something that doesn't exist anymore.
And Jeff, the history is Charlie and I served together. Good guy, great guy. We're friends now. We weren't friends when we were in Congress together. You know, Charlie's a good establishment Republican. I was a crazy Tea Party guy. But yes, Charlie and I differ right now in that even though we both oppose Trump, I think the Republican Party's gone. Charlie will still go on TV with me and he'll still say, man, if you're running against Trump for president, you got to go after him for all these indictments. You got to criticize him. And I think that's crazy because if you criticize Trump, you can't win the nomination. Look at Chris Christie. Chris Christie can't win. Chris Christie knows he can't win. Chris Christie's not trying to win. But he has other motivations.
I lived in Jersey when Christie was governor. Believe me, he wants to win. He might not. He may know he's not going to, but oh boy, does he want to.
True, but he knows he can't. If you are a Republican and you criticize Trump now, you're done. And that's the only point I was making to Charlie Dent. Trump will be indicted again. And Charlie Dent, my friend, will go on TV and say, DeSantis, Pence, Haley, Scott, go after Trump for this indictment. And I will say, if they go after Trump for this next indictment, Republican voters will turn against
The God
him.
they've talked about pardoning him, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
So why Trump? Yeah. What's the magic pixie dust on him, as opposed to people that I think aren't too terribly far from, if he believes in anything, to be honest, and I'm not sure that he does, other than his own wealth. Right. I don't. And let's remember, he said if he ran for president, he would have to run as a Republican because he couldn't fool all the Democrats. And he also said that I'll be the first man to make money on the presidency. And he did. And continues to do so. All of that said, it seems to me that before Trump, and for whatever he may or may not stand for, Rubio, Cruz, I could probably name some others. But why Trump? What's the magic pixie dust with him, in your estimation?
Well, and again, now 7 years removed, it's all a con, and he's a demagogue and a liar and a fraud and evil and all of that. Remember, Jeff, I voted for Trump in 2016. By the way, I
know friends of mine in our revolution have supported Bernie Sanders that voted for him. I get it. He ran on Sanders' platform about tariffs and trade with China and lowering defense spending and raising taxes on rich people like him. I get it. I didn't agree with it, but I understand it. I'm just wondering, from your point of view, from seeing so many of these folks over the years and sitting next to them in the hallowed chambers of the United States House of Representatives, what is it about him?
He said, I'm going to burn the shit down. I'm going to burn the fucking place down. Donald Trump, Jeff, is a disruptor. He promised to disrupt things. Now, I got that. I aimed to do the same thing when I went to Congress. The Republican Party didn't like me. Clearly, the Democrats didn't like me. So I related to Trump when he said, I'm going to go burn it down, smash it up, blow it up. Both parties suck. Our political system is broken. I believe all of that. So Trump is the only one, though, who tapped into that. Rubio, all the rest, conventional politicians like Hillary. Hey, Jeff, Bernie Sanders tapped into that. Mm-hmm. As you just said, Bernie Sanders would have beaten Trump in 2016, I believe. Hillary Clinton was the poster child for an establishment politician. All the other Republicans who ran against Trump in 2016, they were all establishment guys. Trump wasn't. That's why Trump.
So how do you define, if asked, how do you define, and maybe it's way too late to even do this now, but it seems to me that sometimes we have to break it down before we build it back up. What is Trumpism?
Boy, I'll tell you what.
I can say what it isn't. It doesn't seem to be any particular platform of policy initiatives or even stances on things.
I think what it is, Jeff, is it's another way of saying authoritarian.
I agree. It's fascism, isn't it? Really?
Yes. And again, you and I talked a few minutes ago about what the base wants. They want their 1950 America back. Remember, I said Republican voters have given up on democracy in that they don't believe anymore the democratic process can get that America back for them. So they want a dictator, a strongman, a fascist, an authoritarian to have the power to get it back for them. And Jeff, because I come from their world, for 7 years, this is what they've told me privately. That's what it is.
Have any of them told you privately of their fears of fascism? Because it would seem to me that the man that ran on Bernie Sanders' platform is anything, or that the two things don't mix. One can't talk about radically expanding healthcare, making college free, reinstituting a tariff system that we're the only country that doesn't have one, by the way, after Reagan dismantled it, shipping our entire industrial base over to China, some over 60,000 factories, not just jobs, factories leaving the United States during the W. Bush years, saying that all of this is wrong and that you, the 99%, the blue collar, well, this might be a white collared shirt, but it's a blue collar, that you're wearing a blue collar, that the blue collared people of this country, not just white people even, but all people, you've been taking it on the short hairs since at least January 20th, 1981, if not prior. And I'm going to fix it. That seems to me to be the furthest thing, tripping over my own tongue, always good when the radio person trips over his own tongue, the furthest thing from fascism and authoritarianism. How do they square that, or don't they square it? Do they just not care?
Jeff, they don't. It doesn't amaze me, but it always bothers me that when I have these conversations with them, so little of it is issues based. I mean, so little of it is issues based. He's a vehicle. He's a hammer. He's a fist. Trump is. And so I think really Trumpism is authoritarianism to get back to where America just cared about America and the rest of the world can do their thing. And they don't think beyond that.
All right, so you got what you wanted. It's January 20th, 2017. Trump is sworn in. You got what you wanted, that group of folks. You got what you wanted. Here he comes. Here comes the hammer. When all you see are nails, the only answer you have is a hammer. And the very first thing he does is pass what, by the time it is done, will be an $8.4 trillion tax cut, 83% of which going to the top 1% and the largest corporations. The rest of folks, if they did get a tax cut at all, really didn't get a tax cut. They got a change in their withholding to allow them to bring home a few more bucks a week, and you just owed it all again at the end of the year anyway. And no one wakes up from that either.
He built the wall. He went on TV and went after CNN and called them the enemy of the people. He did those things. I don't think the average Trump supporter could say one word of explanation about the tax cut he passed. Not one word.
Whose failure is that? Is it whose failure is that? Is it their failure, or is it a media failure?
Both, because, and Jeff, you make a great point. Remember, for 4 years now, for 7 years, Trump's had his cheerleaders in the right-wing media world, the world I come from. When he got elected, Jeff, I was on 100 radio stations around the country. And all of the conservative radio hosts and Fox News personalities, they echoed all of this BS that he put out. So they're to blame too.
How about just a quick virtual high five and shout out to the radio guys like you and me? If radio didn't still work, there wouldn't be 1,500 right-wing hate radio stations in this country, and there wouldn't be 500 on top of that Spanish language. So if radio didn't still work, we wouldn't be, it still works.
It still works. It still works. And I mean, Jeff, look, if, Fresh Limbaugh were still alive, he'd still be out there as a king, probably still pushing Trump. But yeah, it's still in that world for that base, for the Republican Party base, radio still works.
Why do you think there are so few voters? I'm going to butcher the quote from Benjamin Franklin because I'm really taxing my brain. What little of it is left at my advanced age, but that you cannot have both an ill-informed electorate and a democracy. My dad always taught me when I was young that even though he and I did not share the same political philosophy, and I can tell you there was no lack of disappointment on his part in that. That it's not hard to be informed. It really isn't. Pick up a newspaper. And if you don't want to read the whole article, then read the first few paragraphs. That's where most of the information is anyway. And newspapers are written at a fifth grade level. It's not hard. And especially in a social media age like this, with as much disinformation as there is out there, and God knows there's tons of it. And Mr. Zuckerberg just launched a new platform for disinformation this week, which I'm ruminating about whether to become part of or not, because I have a job to do. And people, if I do this program and no one listens, it's just a tree in the proverbial tree in the forest. But is it hard to be? It's not. It seems to me that it's not hard to be too informed, to know that 83% of that tax cut went to the top 1%. And that it wasn't really just the 2.1 trillion when it was passed, that by the time it's all said and done, it'll be about 8.4. And that a good 25% of the national debt was accrued in the 4 years under Trump. These are not difficult things, and they're facts. Why is it so hard? Or is it by choice then? I just, see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I like Trump, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, and Jeff, I think this is a problem that really is a population-wide problem. This is most Americans. We most Americans don't seek to be informed. We seek out media sources that will confirm the things we kind of think we believe. Both sides do this. The left does this. Look, if you're a hardcore progressive and you want to go on cable news, you're going to go watch MSNBC. They're going to tell you that what you think is probably right. Same with Fox News. We do too much of this. We have an abundance of places to get informed, more than our parents did, more than our grandparents did. But we seek out a small little bifurcated world that will just echo what we want to hear.
Is it oversimplified to say that a restoration of the Fairness Doctrine and repeal of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 fixes this?
No, yes, it is oversimplified, and I don't think it would fix it. You see, you and I could have a fun 7-hour conversation about this.
About just the Fairness Doctrine?
Yeah,
probably, yes.
I tend to think I don't want. And again, this is just Jeff, just the libertarian in me. And I think when you look at the history of the Fairness Doctrine, humongous problems with it. But I just never want to give the government that power that the government can determine what is or not in the common good. So I don't think that's the answer. I think the onus, and our founders would say the onus is on us. You've got a shitload of resources out there, American people. And if you don't take advantage of them and use them, then you're going to lose this republic.
What about the Telecommunications Act? Seems to me that was a massive mistake, signed by the president of my party. The consolidation of ownership seems to have come from that. I'm not sure there could be a Fox News without it. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I'm not an expert in anything. I'm a human being. I try to stay informed. I try to talk to folks. That's why we're here. I just wonder if the Fairness Doctrine, which began this consolidation and really, I think, led to the even more so explosion of the cable industry, even though the first cable channels go back to the 70s, that was a real turning point where you couldn't own a newspaper and or a radio station and or a TV station in one market. You could have one, but not the others. Now you own as much as you want.
I think, Jeff, that's an area where two people like you and I could get together and maybe come to some common ground. Because that is an area of more concern to me, the monopolization of the media in this country. So I do believe, but interestingly, the power brokers in both parties really have no interest in even looking at that. Look, we got we got Fox News way back in the day because generally the media in this country generally, gave us generally a left of center viewpoint. So it was natural that eventually there was going to be something that came along to speak to these other people once cable really got going.
Is there no... This leads me to a bit of a story. Surprise. Jeff's going to tell another story. When I did my 4th anniversary show here and I'm literally in the second bedroom of my house. God bless Kristen for being as patient as she is to allow me to remove the only place that we could have friends and family stay to become this spaghetti sea of wires and so on and so on. That one of the reasons, and I had April Riddick was here, who is part owner of Hot101.net, that allows me to speak to the planet, quite literally. And it's amazing, the technology, if you think about it. We could not even 20 years ago could we be doing what we're doing right now. Yeah. And we might be able to do it 10 years ago, but it would be really slow and jumpy and pretty darn hard to take in. But all of that said, I asked her if I was doing any good. And why aren't we more popular, and why aren't we more watched? And even though the show has grown in the 4.5 years from, I don't know, I think we had about 1,200 listeners to start. We're at 250,000 now. So somebody's out there. That said, why aren't we bigger? Why aren't we more? Why don't I have, advertisers I can turn away? Why don't I have so many phone calls I can't get to them all in 4 hours? And she said, because you're boring. And I said, okay, well, that hurts. And she goes, no, you're boring. She goes, you're just telling people the truth. And you're not filleting a chicken on screen. You're not taking pictures of Nancy Pelosi and shooting darts at it. You're not standing on top of the table screaming. You're not allowing that one opposition caller in just to make a fool out of them. There's no histrionics. It's just the truth. And even though you and I could probably have that same 7-hour discussion just on taxes, we're not going to kill each other at the end of it. Where a couple of Irishmen are going to go have a pint and watch a football match after it, probably, God willing. Yeah. And even though we probably don't support the same football club, mine's right there, by the way. But so where did that break down? Is that what we have to do? Is that what you have to do on White Flag to get people to pay attention? Stand on top of the table? I know that you don't, but my point is, do you have to stand on top of the table, burn flags, shoot buckshot through pictures of people and all of that crap just to get someone to listen? Isn't that the kind of sad degradation of all this, is that's kind of what you have to do to get people to listen? And then when you have an entire network based in it, then you just get lied to anyway.
So,
or several networks, to be honest.
No, I'm
thinking of Newsmax and One America.
You nailed it. I mean, that's the world I walked away from. To make money in this media world now, in the political media world, you have to choose a side. You have to be as far extreme right as you can be, or as far extreme left as you can be. That's where the audience is. That's where the money is. That's where the ratings are. And I was that. And when I was in that world, Jeff, I was doing really well, and I was divisive, and I was firing all this red meat at my listeners. And then Trump came along and my world changed. And so now, like you, I'm in this world where I'm trying to put truth in front of people and bring people together and find common ground. And right now, at this point in history, there's not a humongous market for that. There just isn't.
6:01 Eastern Time, we have entered the second hour of the Kennedy Effect. We are live with you for the 9th of July, 2023. We trust and hope that you had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. We missed you last weekend, but left you alone, so to speak, to go have your holiday weekend. I worked on July 4th, and it was brutal. Just saying that so many of us now, we don't have holidays the way we used to in a labor market in this country. It's a sad thing. I can remember when I was a kid, 4th of July, pretty much everything was closed unless you needed to go to a hospital, and maybe the local community pool was open. Everything else was shut. But I worked. And I'm not the only one. God knows, about half the country worked on what is supposed to be our most sacred national holiday. Wherever you might be across the Facebook universe, and I have to be honest with you folks, I don't know where you are seeing us on Facebook, because yet again, the Facebook gods have decided that I share too much. And so I'm being shut down a bit from some of the sharing. I have no idea what groups we are on at the moment. I was able to get about 100 shares out before I was shut off. But each and every one of you listening, watching, if you think anything of the program at all, or maybe even if you hate it, feel free to share it, because apparently I can't. But I hope you are seeing it, I hope you are enjoying it, and I hope you are getting something from the discussion. Again, we want your comments. I may or may not open up the phone while Mr. Walsh is here. I have no idea how long he's staying either. Every single minute is a gift, so we will take everything that we can get. I want to see your comments. I will take the comments. There have been some decent ones here in the chat. I will get to them, I promise. Wherever you are on Facebook, come on over to my own personal timeline. That seems to be the one that was not shut down, which is Jeff Kennedy, or our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. We are also live right now at the very same time on our YouTube channel, also called That Other Side of Information. You can put your comments and questions and everything else. Yell at me, agree with me, disagree with me, tell me my glasses are ugly, tell me you can tell me how much you love Manchester United, because everyone does. Put it in the chat. I will see it. I promise you, if you have questions, I will ask them. You know how it goes here. I will ask questions when you put them forth. I will share your comments when you do. That Other Side of Information is our home group Facebook page and our YouTube channel. To our sisters and brothers and friends and family at hot101.net, thank you for allowing us to be part of your broadcast day yet again, wherever you might be listening around the world. If you can connect to the internet, you can listen to hot101.net, and you should be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Laptops, desktops, tablets, phones. You can Bluetooth it to speakers, earbuds, headphones. You can Bluetooth it in your car, and you can play America's favorite game show. You can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, because I did that over the air once, and I turned on someone's Alexa and they started listening to me, and they've been listening ever since. And I'm very, very pleased that I did it, because I'm an immature little boy, and I thought it was funny, and I think it's funny, and I'm going to keep trying to do it. So you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. And hello to our friends and family at the TCP Media Group, an important media outlet right here out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Let us also mention our sponsor, the only sponsor the show has, and that is the PayGive app, www.paygive.org. You can buy gift cards through PayGive, and as a part of your transaction, you can designate that a part of that monetary transaction go to a charity or even a political candidate of your choice. You can give to the American Heart Association, the ASPCA. There's veterans groups, hospital groups, child advocacy groups. You can designate that a part of your purchase go to those charitable organizations that you agree with and support. The PayGive app, if you don't have it, download it. It's very, very simple. Go to the App Store, Google Play Store, find it, and you can start using it. It is that simple. www.paygive.org. The PayGive app. You have to pay for things anyway. Might as well give while you do it. Our guest is former Representative Joe Walsh of the outstanding 8th Congressional District in the great state of Illinois.
And by the way, Jeff, you got me for 10 more
Okay.
minutes.
Let me ask you how...
And I'd be happy to do this again, my friend.
Careful, because I will... Careful. Careful what you wish for. Well, then let me ask you quickly, because why is the discussion that you and I are having so important? It's damn important to me, not just for our show, but because you and I don't agree on things, and I know that we don't. But again, here we are, face to face, respect. I don't want to say monotone, but you know what I mean. We're not screaming at each other. We're not throwing, rotten tomatoes at each other. Just having a discussion. Why is this so important?
And I don't know where you are on this, Jeff. And I was saying this before Trump got elected, back when I was in Congress. I said it long before Marjorie Taylor Greene said a few months ago, maybe it's time for a divorce. I really do worry that we cannot and will not keep this thing called America together. I really do worry that we will not keep all 50 states in the union. I worry that we're tearing apart, literally. And I felt this way for a long time. It's why I ran for office. And I believe that until the country can have conversations like this with people who disagree, we're done. We're done. So this has got to happen.
I mean, I'm certainly no fan of President Reagan, and I think his deification is, politically, his political deification is just as equally politically sacrilegious. But that said, there are the infamous stories of how Tip O'Neill used to go to the White House at night and they'd sit and share scotch and talk about, we can't cut taxes anymore. Well, yes, we can, and we should be doing this. Well, no, we shouldn't. Well, have you ever thought about this approach? Well, I'm a Democrat. I don't believe what you believe. I believe this is the way we should be doing things. And I remember a time in the country where, especially after the New Deal and after the war, it seemed to me that the two parties agreed on where we needed to be. They simply disagreed on the path. Where did we lose that? Or if you agree with the supposition of the question.
I'd quibble with some of it, Jeff, but I think, and this is why Trump, and this is why Bernie Sanders, and this is why I think there's a lot more coming. I think our political system, and I felt this way for a while, is broken. I think our system's broken. I think the way we elect people is broken. I'm a rare conservative who believes we got to get the hell rid of the Electoral College. I think our two-party duopoly is done. We need a third party, a fourth party, a fifth party. We need major reform to come from outside of our political system because it's broken and it's a mess. And so I think, a long time coming, but, the Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan sitting down, look, that's great, that's swell, but that ain't America today because the people feel so disconnected from their politics.
You are probably familiar with movetoamend.org.
Yeah.
The constitutional amendment or the constitutional amendment effort to declare that corporations are not people and that money is not speech. And I won't go through my entire diatribe about why money can't be speech. If speech is free and equal and money is not free and equal, then money can't be speech. A plus B equals C. Does it start with Citizens United, or does it have to be something more visceral and more base than that?
Yeah, you and I'd fight about that, Jeff. I'm not. You and I, again. Hey, write this down. That's another topic you and I could have a 7-hour conversation on. Citizens United. I'd love your reaction to this. I've always been very libertarian when it comes to money in politics. I don't believe there's too much money in politics. Look, give me ultimate transparency. I don't think there should be campaign limits. Jeff, if you want to give me $1 million to run for office, you should be able to do it, but that should be disclosed instantly and every voter should be aware of it instantly. I think we got to put a lot of this on the American people, as you and I said, who are not paying attention. But Jeff, that's a fascinating conversation of how we reform money in politics.
It would be my argument that money in politics gave us the Freedom Caucus. When you have people so as fundamentally ill-informed, illogical, by choice, angry, it just, dare I say, I'm going to venture into that territory I don't like to venture into, at a minimum, a willful ignorance, if not a visceral ignorance, gets them elected because they'll do whatever the people buying them tell them to do.
Hey, my good friend Jeff Kennedy, I can give you a crap load of examples. on each side of the aisle in just the House of Representatives of members just like that.
Make no mistake. Any regular listener to our program, and I hope you will be a new one. I've said here for years, my party is not perfect. It's not even close. We have a long way to go to return to the party of Jefferson and Madison and Teddy Roosevelt, for that matter, and Franklin and John Kennedy and Harry Truman and Lyndon Johnson. We've got a long way to go to return to those. We're not perfect, but I do sometimes think we're just the only ones trying.
Well, right now, Jeff, we have two major political parties in this country. I think your party is wrong on a lot of stuff, but I work every day of my life now to help get members of your party elected.
I agree with you that I think, despite the drawbacks that it does have, a parliamentary system has a lot of advantages. There's another hours-long discussion we could have. Darn it, the great.
I am a Tea Party conservative who has spent the past 5 years helping Democrats get elected, even though that goes against some of my policy interests, because, Jeff, my former party is just fully anti-democracy. That's so.
Well, then let me make this one of the last questions, because I think it's a pretty quick answer.
Yeah.
There are 50 states and territories above and beyond that. At a minimum, Florida and Texas. Are these functional democracies? It would be my estimate. I have advocated that they are not. That we have two essentially fascist states inside the Union. Your thoughts?
Well, Jeff, that's such a great question. That's such a great topic. Damn.
More hours.
No, it's wonderful. But yes, they are still functioning states and democracies, but they have very strong, like a few states in this country, very strong governors, one-party rule. I come from Illinois. You talk about a one-party state. I come from just outside of Chicago. You talk about a one-party city forever. That's a problem that always scares me. When you have one party with absolute power for a long time, bad stuff will happen.
Your state,
and we also bad stuff happen in Texas and Florida.
Your state is not different than mine in some fashions, in that if this country were to separate itself again, as it did in the 1860s, Pennsylvania would tear itself into 1,000 pieces. It's not just like that border would be the Mason-Dixon line. Pennsylvania, right, inside of Pennsylvania, would tear itself into 1,000 pieces, as would Illinois. You talk about the massive Democratic registration and voting bloc in Chicago and the Chicagoland suburbs, but Southern Illinois is as dead red as it gets.
So
Illinois would rip itself into shreds.
So that's why a civil war or a breakup wouldn't be as clean as the Civil War is, because we're not talking, Jeff, you nailed it. We're not talking state by state. The divide in this country is urban versus rural. I don't know how the hell you break that up.
I know that you have to go. You've given us probably more time than you were planning. And
Hell yes, but I've had fun.
The immensity of my gratefulness is not going to be able to be explained in the next couple of seconds. But what I want to do before you go is give you the same that we give every guest to the program. Tell people how to find you, how to follow you, how to contact you if you want to share that. But anything that you wish to throw out there, how do they watch your show? How do they find you? How do they communicate with you? How does this conversation keep going? If there's anything that you really wanted to touch on that we didn't get time to, I just want to turn the floor over to you. It is yours.
Thank you, Jeff. And I'll take 30 seconds. And I'll start by saying thank you for inviting me on. And yeah, I meant the invitation. I'll come back. You and I will set it up. Stay in touch. We'll do this again. The podcast is White Flag with Joe Walsh. Every week I sit down with somebody who doesn't think like me, and we do what you're trying to do here. Listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. You can watch it on my YouTube channel, White Flag with Joe Walsh. If you tweet, follow me on Twitter at Walsh Freedom. I'm on Threads. Jeff, you ought to be on Threads.
I have to.
You should. Be on every platform you can be, because we're fighting to defend the democracy. It's at Walsh_freedom. Anybody who wants to reach out to me with an email, feel free. WalshJMP64 Jeff, thank you.
Well, you said it, and I'm going to hold you to it. And please know, I don't have the words to thank you for being here for our humble little program. You're so much more better known and have such a wider scope than we do. For you to take a Sunday evening to come and visit us means the world to me. The conversation means the world to me, that we can talk to each other. And at the end of our, at least if you were in the room, at the end of it, we can, walk together arm in arm, go have a pint, and still appreciate each other's humanity at a very minimum. And be careful what you wish for, because I will ask you to come back. But I would also extend it just a little bit further, that if you have something in between those visits that you think we really need to hear about, please, the keys to the castle, you have them now. Please come back and see us. Folks, you really need to watch this week. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, you really need to watch this week. Pay attention to what the court is doing, or the House, or this legislation, or whatever. You are always, always welcome here. And welcome, I got bad news too. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the Kennedy Effect family. So we will call on you again, and you are always, always welcome here.
Thank you, brother. Thanks,
Have a
Jeff.
wonderful evening. Thank you. We will talk again.
Thanks,
Cheers.
man. Thank you.
That is former Representative Joe Walsh, and that is a super, God darn it, that was fun. Oh my God, that was fun. Jeez, that was fun. Gosh, that's brilliant stuff. And by the way, folks, for him to give us an hour like that, it's a big deal. I mean, let's just be honest. Let us just be honest about this. There is a pecking order in what I do. It's a big deal for somebody that much more famous than I to step down and share. And it is a step down, I have to be honest, as egotistical as I can be. It is a big deal for him to step into our world and come and visit us, because I'm not as well known. It's not a big commercial venture. And that was an extremely kind thing that he did. I mean, he still gets thousands of dollars in speaking fees to appear around the country and things like that. I don't, that's not us. Nobody's ever received a dime to be part of this program. So that was a big, big deal. And gosh, fantastic. Just brilliant. And gosh, that was great. I was very excited by that. And I mean it when I said that I was a bit nervous going into that, because here's some, the man's run for national office. I certainly haven't. As much as I still dream about it, I haven't. And, that was big, and I really enjoyed that. And I certainly don't mean to pat myself on the back about it either. Let's just be blunt. I don't mean to pat myself on the back about it. But, yeah, so that's very, very cool. That was wonderful. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal, because we don't, like I said, we don't pay anybody to come here. There's no money for it, like literally none. And that was nice. That was really lovely. And let's not forget about what Rep. Walsh said. We have to talk to each other. I know that he and I don't agree on issues. We probably don't agree on almost any. But at the end of the day, when we turn that discussion away from politics, religion, finances, economy, all these things, that we can still sit together, for a couple of Irish guys, share a pint, or, in a broader sense, break bread and talk about sports or kids or family or whatever that might be. That's really important. And we used to be able to do that in this country. We used to be able to disagree with Uncle Larry at Thanksgiving, and at the end of the night, when Uncle Larry was off to go home, hug each other, tell you love each other, and everything's fine. Now it's crazy Uncle Larry that you want to put at the kids' table because he's worried that aliens made the turkey. and yet he's still family. And those discussions aren't happening. They are not happening. And they need to start happening again. Let me say this to the folks that were kind enough to place comments in. I will admit, I thought I had a bit longer to rep than I did. So I did miss some of your comments. I will go back and I will get them. And the phone line, ring it. You're up. Phone line's open, 267-227-9189. And we'll carry the show as long as we are having a discussion or as long as there are things to talk about. And I honestly, forgive me for not getting to the comments. I was really, really focused on talking to Rep Walsh, and I didn't know how long he was going to be here. And yeah, maybe I even fanboyed out a little bit. I don't agree with him on almost any policy position, but I do think he loves this country. I believe that in my heart. And I do think he has the same idea and ideal of patriotism that we talk about on this program. That you do not criticize a thing because you hate it. You criticize it because you love it and because you want it to be as great as it can possibly be. Again, it's to form a more perfect union. The presupposition being that we are not and may never be perfect, but it's something that we always strive for. And that the opposite of love is not hate, it is apathy. When you no longer care, that's really the opposite of love. That you don't even, you care so little that you can't even criticize something or want it to be better because you literally don't care about it. That's exactly what I believe Rep Walsh is trying to fight. It's what I'm trying to fight here. Now, look, I believe progressivism. I believe the policies of the New Deal and what the Democratic Party should always stand for. What it does stand for the most part, but not always, that's the way to go. He disagrees. Okay, let's have those discussions. We're not having them now. The discussions now with that base that Representative Walsh was talking about is, you're a Democrat, I'm going to kill you. And everything is your fault. Now, here's where Rep Walsh and I would probably disagree. And he alluded to that to a point. I would say that that very Republican base has been betrayed by its own party. Democratic policies did not ship the entire United States industrial base to China. That was Republican policies. We failed to do enough to stop it. But we didn't promote it. We didn't cut taxes on the top 1% by $55 trillion, where literally there would be no national debt without all of the income tax cuts from the Reagan, Bush, and Trump administrations. We didn't do that. But maybe we didn't do enough to stop it either. And I know he and I would probably disagree about that, but it's a conversation that I desperately hope will take place. I hope he meant it. Boy, I hope he meant what he said. I really hope he comes back. I really, really do. Let me zip through the comments a little bit here before the phone has a chance to ring. I will let me actually just do this really quick here. I will add the phone number on the screen, on the crawl. I think I did that pretty quickly and pretty well. And show. That should work. Now the phone line should start coming up on the screen. My name was on the screen, but apparently when I'm alone, it's not there anymore. So I'm not certain why that is that way. And that is a new thing since I've started using this that I don't understand. Some things on this seem to change, and I don't exactly know why. In this presentation, in this streaming app, I shouldn't say app, really. It's more complicated than that. So I'm not exactly sure why that is working that way, but apparently my name doesn't show anymore like it is supposed to. Can't tell you why that's happening. It did come up for a bit when he was here, but I don't know. I can't say. Maybe it will change if I play with it. I honestly don't know. But that said, so that's it. That's our discussion with Rep Walsh. I hope you enjoyed it. I very much hope you enjoyed it because, gosh, I sure as hell did. I sure did. That's for darn sure. Let me get to some of the comments that came in through Facebook and through YouTube. And apparently, I don't know, something changed at some of the places that we shared on Facebook are now live. I honestly don't know. I really don't. I don't know. I just don't. Randall mentions the leading 2024 House of Representatives candidate, Democratic candidate from the state of Delaware, is the current state senator, and if she is elected, she will be the first trans person in the House of Representatives. You are correct. You are absolutely correct, and that will be a very, very important day. Fern, former guest of the program, actually says, oh, the desire for Christian theocracy is very, very real. She encountered it on the campaign trail in 2022. I know that you did. She actually came here to tell us all about it. Fern mentions later on that Representative Walsh, Joe was right. Today's Republican Party censured Cindy McCain. Senator McCain would not have a place in today's GOP. And I know that I've said this before, that we don't, it's a very semantical and it's a very, very nudgy little argument on my point, perhaps, way too small. And I mean small in a bad way kind of argument. I think we've got to stop referring to Republicans and the former party known as the Republican Party. And I know that Joe didn't agree with that necessarily, didn't agree with my supposition. We've got to stop referring to them as the grand old party, the GOP. There's nothing grand about them, and they're not a functioning political party. Joe Walsh said it himself, that Republicanism has become totalitarianism. He used the word fascism. He uses the word fascism on television. When he is invited to be a guest on the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world, I don't think he gets invited on Fox anymore, to be honest. I should have asked him. I forgot that. I probably should have asked him. He's willing and uses the word fascism, and we need to use that word. There's nothing grand about the grand old party. The only three things in that name, there's only out of the three words of that there's only one of them that remains to be true: old. There's nothing grand about them. They're not a political party, functional, but they are old, and they're overwhelmingly white. Don't let Senator Tim Scott fool you. Senator Scott knows how to make money. I don't think it's anything more than that. Fern mentions that cable news shows are opinion about the news. I would largely agree. Maybe my own bias is coming to the fore here. But countless university and nonpartisan studies have shown that Fox is outright lying to people. Joy Reid, Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow, Lawrence O'Donnell, Alex Wagner might all be Ali Velshi. Jonathan Capehart, folks on throughout MSNBC might be giving you their opinions, but they're not lying to you about what's happening. They're still telling you the truth of what's going on in the country and in the world. They're not lying to you about that part of it. They are certainly laying their own opinions all over it. Hell, I do that. But I'm not lying to you about what's going on. There's the difference. Fox is flat out lying to you about what's happening. Literally making stuff up out of whole cloth. Ignoring other entire sections of news and so on. The fairness doctrine would not help or would not apply to cable channels. I'm not 100%. The fairness doctrine wouldn't, but the Telecommunications Act would. I believe it would limit, if my understanding of the Telecommunications Act is accurate, and I happen to believe that it is, it would limit ownership. NBC would not be able to own MSNBC and NBC News Now and CNBC, et cetera, et cetera. Jackie Baker, a former guest of the program and friend. Well, friend's a friend, too. I shouldn't say that like that. Shouldn't differentiate. More people need to understand our history, learn about the American Revolution and what it took to build this democracy, this republic. It's fragile and it takes effort to keep it alive and well by its citizens. This is particularly important because Republicans and the billionaires that own them trying to establish a fascist dictatorship in this country. It's literally what we fought a revolution against. Literally. Against the king and the rich that surrounded him. It's why the Roman Empire fell. Because the rich didn't feel they needed to contribute, pay anything, or be a particular part of the empire other than ruling it. We've done this before. Empires crumble. All empires in history have failed. All of them. All of them. And we are, by good measure, and by many scholarly definitions, an empire. What made us different is that we allowed the residents and citizens of this country to vote and help determine the direction of the country. When that stops, and that's the path we're on, when that stops, that's the end. Let me see. Randall mentions that the elder George Bush, Reagan's vice president and then president for a term himself, called it voodoo economics when he ran against Reagan in the 1980 Republican primary. However, he jumped ship on the trickle-down theory when Reagan picked him up as VP. You are absolutely correct. 100%. In a Republican primary debate. And you know, the interesting thing about this, too, and this is something I hope Joe Walsh and I kind of skirted really around the edges of, and there's a lot of meat there. You know that I've talked to you before. We don't just need campaign finance reform in this country. We need campaign reform. There are now, I think, 12 or 15 Republicans running for the presidential nomination. Only maybe 2 to 3 of them have an actual chance of winning it. The rest are running to make money because it's now legal to keep the money that you raise. If you don't spend it all, you get to keep it. Or might increase your speaking fees, or you write a book. Make millions off of that. Running for office has become a cottage industry. We don't just need campaign finance reform in this country. We need campaign reform in this country. Proper campaign reform. Limit the amount of time that you can campaign. Limit the amount of money that can be spent. All of it. They do this in the UK. They may announce when an election is going to take place. Candidates can only campaign active and openly for 6 weeks prior. Might be 8 weeks. I might have that wrong. It's either 6 or 8 weeks. This is the kind of thing we need in this country. I happen to agree with Joe Walsh. We do need more political parties in this country. And gosh darn it, if the Libertarians get 5% of the vote in Congress, then they should have 5% of the seats. If the Greens get 10%, then they should have 10% of the seats. But I would couple that with an adjustment, an expansion of the House of Representatives. We stopped growing the House of Representatives, I believe it was in 1909, where the number of members was capped at 435. If we had kept going with population, there would be, really think I'm wrong about this now, because now I got a bunch of different numbers in my head. I think there'd be almost 2,000 members of the House of Representatives. I think I could be wrong about that, though. I think I could be properly wrong about that. That's way too many. Where did I get that number from? I'm taxing my own brain, and I'm losing. It might be 1,200. Regardless, there would be infinitely more members of the House of Representatives than there would be now. So if we're going to do proportional voting, then I would couple that with an expansion of the House. And we can. We can do that. I understand that the founders and framers did not intend for a parliamentary system, in my mind. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't benefit from one. If you're a voter out there, if you're a citizen, a resident, and you're looking for something different other than the traditional two major parties, and I would say again, there's only one left, and you really want your vote to count, then we need to find a way to allow those votes to count. Again, if the Libertarians get 5% of the vote, then let them get 5% of the members of the House. The Greens get 10, let them get 10. And so on and so on and so on. And the immediate implication of that is that we might have 100 political parties in this country. But eventually, that will fall to the wayside. Our nation is actually a bit of an aberration in the fact that we've only really ever had, at any given time in our history, 3 viable political parties. And even when we did the brief times that we had 3, eventually one fell away and we always came back to 2. That said, I think there's more. Jackie Baker says it was set in 1929. I don't know that. I would swear it was earlier than that. But if you Googled it, then I will take you at your word. And Jackie mentions that one party is trying to take away voting rights while the other protects it. I agree 100%. 1,000%. One party doesn't want you to vote, period. They want minority rule. And the other wants you to vote. So let me answer that. Hang on. Okay. I answered it. Now, can I play with this phone stand enough that people can hear you? Maybe, because I haven't fixed the phones yet, folks. Yay! Jeff didn't fix the phones yet. George asked to work to fix the phones, and Jeff was in so much pain and so tired and working like a dog, I didn't do it. So this is all on me. George has made every effort to work with me to fix the phones, and I have been the one to put it off. So let me say forgive me about that. But anyway, it is area code 570. First name, where are you calling from? Oh gosh. Oh, I hit the wrong button. I was supposed to hit the red. I was supposed to take the blue pill. Hey, I gotta ask. I gotta ask you to do me a favor. I answered you from the wrong device, so no one is hearing you. And that is my fault. Completely. 100%. Because I answered you from the computer screen the way I would normally do it instead of the phone. And then I put the phone up to the mic, and it occurred to me no one is hearing you. You can take me on all you want. Just give me, I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. We're welcome to ring back in. I have to remember and be smart enough to answer the darn thing from the phone. As you can see, I have it propped up in front of me to go straight into the microphone, except I'm using the software, which was dumb because the software is not working. And so none of you are hearing it, except I'm hearing all of it, but that doesn't help you. So, that said, big technical error on my part, party foul over here. I'm going to hang up, but you can ring back if you want, and I will use my brain this time and answer it from the correct point of contact. So forgive me for that. So let me say goodbye for now. 267 227 9189 267 227 9189. That was a dumb one on my part. I need to remember where to answer the phone from, which is the phone, not the computer, because it's not working. And I don't know why it took me that long to figure that out. 267 227 9189. 267 227 9189. Let's try this now. I answered it. I answered it. My screen is going blank. Okay. Now I think I got it. Now try.
Well, I agree with what the gentleman said
Why
about
does it keep ringing?
party.
Oh,
And I've never considered that in either a Democratic or Republican side. Now, I had a lot of friends who I've talked to, or people, I'm from England. And one of the questions, since I taught political science, was, isn't that a mess? Isn't that a problem? You have all these different parties. How do you stop having thousands? And they said, believe it or not, it forces compromise. You must work together. And those smaller parties have a tendency to weed themselves out. He said, now we do work on the fact that our electorate is going to be either liberal, conservative, and those in between. But he says, I truly believe that it serves those who are in between. Now, you and I have joked with me about being a former Republican, I've gone Democrat. I would say I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't want to throw a thing out. I want to repair it. I want to get it to work. I want it to get it to function. I don't think it's either a yes or no question. There's no black and white in life, and there is none in politics. And you have to work to make something function. Now, if we're going to be two parties, and we're going to be on those extreme ends, Jeff, I'd like to find a party that is a little Republican, a little Democrat, a little Libertarian. Why can't there be that? And some people act as if you want to tear the American flag down and destroy the country. But we're changing. We're no longer just all white, either urban or rural, living in the woods, farmer, industrial. We're multinational, multicolored, multi-belief. It's time to change the aspect that you can only be two parties. And,
well, let's do a couple of things.
Voice if they're more than just being that third party.
Let's do a couple of things. I would say that there are, while I am suspect of them, there are a few efforts in this country to create the party that you're talking about. I would suggest that to an extent, the Lincoln Project is trying to foster that. Here in Pennsylvania, it's there's another party here. it's not. I'm forgetting the name of it now. They've asked to be on the program too, and I hope to have them on. And I'm blanking on. It's the Commonwealth Party or the. It's not the Liberty Party. They didn't do that. It's I'm blanking on the name of it. I would say the Lincoln Project is trying to do that to an extent. I would say that No Labels is trying to do that. However, we have to consider and keep in mind where the money from these two groups is coming. It's still coming from billionaires. Some of the same billionaires who have propped up the Ted Cruz's and Marco Rubio's and Josh Hawley's and Trump's and Rand Paul's and the like. They keep Mitch McConnell in office. It's the same folks. So I would be suspect of that. Lincoln also seems to take as its presupposition that the United States is a center-right country. It's very fiscally conservative, but it wants to allow gay people to marry. I think that supposition is fundamentally false. The United States is not a center-right country. It is a center-left country. It is a socially liberal country that is, in general, fiscally conservative. No one wants to pay more taxes than they have to pay, but they're willing to pay them. And by and large, Americans are willing to take tax increases to pay for things like the Defense Department, the Energy Department, the Environmental Protection Agency, on local levels, things like schools and roads and electrical systems and water systems, whereas the faux conservative movement would have you think that no American wants to pay for any of the commons, what Tom Hartman refers to as the commons, the roads, the airports, the libraries, the schools. Nobody wants to pay for that. Let's just make it all private and profitable. Overwhelmingly, percentages of the American populace do not want these things. We are a center-left country. When presented with the policies enacted during the New Deal to people today, without a political persuasion attached to it, they support all of it. The majority of Republicans believe, in some polls I've seen as many as 2/3, that the richest among us need massively higher taxes. Not just higher, way higher. So we are not a center-right country. We are a socially liberal country that feels, generally speaking, of course there are exceptions. In a country of 330 million, there's always going to be exceptions. But generally speaking, we are a center-left country that believes that as long as people are not hurting anybody and not breaking the law, they should be left to live their own lives, which used to be a conservative point of view, by the way. We are also a center-left country economically. No, I don't want to be taxed at 90%. I'd be homeless, I'd starve to death, all that. But Americans believe in a progressive tax system where we don't pay more than we have to, but we're willing to pay for the things that we know we need to pay for. So I would be very wary of these other efforts. They are still backed by billionaires.
When I usually talk, when I was working, I've met a lot of younger people who were looking towards Bernie Sanders. Now, I'm not going to get into Mr. Sanders because there are some things I agree and some things I want to look at him and go, Bernie, it's a wonderful idea, but it's not going to work. But I asked him why. And I would even be a little brash to get an argument going by simply saying, you vote for Bernie Sanders.
I can't imagine you ever starting an argument.
And that would bring out a little bit of truth and a little bit of emotionalism. I said, well, you tell me, I have to go to the Republican or Democratic Party and fully pledge myself to this? There are some ideas I just don't believe in. And now, unfortunately, the parties have become that. And the Republicans, worse than anything. I told you, that's why I left it. It was a strong, you either had to walk with a step, or you weren't a Republican, get out. Okay, I'm out.
I would argue currently in goose step.
Well, I'm sorry, but that sometimes I look at that, and that's what worries me about it.
And you heard
when
Representative
say that,
Walsh say the same
argue with
thing.
you.
You heard him say the same thing. That's what worries him. This far right Christian authoritarian. Why can't say it? Why can't I say that tonight? It's very interesting. Authoritarian Christian theocracy. But at the end of the day, whether it's the evangelicals or the Christian theocrats or these folks with this very, very twisted version of religion, or the folks that Representative Walsh mentioned that are generally good folks, good people, they have decided that they are willing to end democracy in this country. It's not convenient for them anymore. The way for the downtrodden middle class white guy to finally get a break in this country is to embrace fascism. I got news for you, folks. You're not going to be any better that way.
The thing of the matter is, I'll go the emotional one. Living up here in central Pennsylvania about abortion. Okay, I don't want to see anybody killed, but I say, all right, listen, why do people choose that? Well, most likely they're lower income and they shouldn't be having children. Well, that's wonderful. The Romans tried to do it. The Japanese tried to do it. The Germans
Chinese tried to do it.
So what are you going to do? How about we look at the problem? What can we do to make it and assist better, reduce it? How about child care? Why can't we do that? Why can't we assist there? We started Head Start. You complain that only works for the poor. Well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But we're talking about the education of children, increasing their ability to be competitive in a world that's becoming, well, with AI, is going to get even harder. And you talk to them, and it comes down to, once again, back in this party, which I think is financial. I don't want my tax dollars going on it. And religion. There's a wonderful ideas, but the problems here, and embracing that is going to make them go away. But they full-heartedly believe that. If there was a party that said, let us sit down and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's try and fix it. And if after a while it doesn't work, then we scrap it and rebuild anew. As I said, if your house burns down, you just simply say, well, that's it. I'm going to live in a box. There's no point. Why should I do it? If I build another house, it's going to burn down. You try anew. That's the thing that gets me. It's just either destroy it or totally save it. And let's not change it, because if we make a change, then it's going to prove that it's wrong, that there's something not right, and you're stuck with this mess. And a lot of us in the middle, there's no place to go. There's no place to go. If we had multiple parties, yes, we may not have the power. We may not last long, but at least we'd have a chance of feeling we have a voice, something to do.
The other thing I wanted to, I don't want to say fight back with, because it's not a fight.
No.
The UK, United Kingdom, and countries throughout Western Europe, as well as the African countries and any country that has a parliamentary system, is still, generally speaking, there are exceptions. It's a big planet. There's 186, I think, recognized countries by the United Nations. That actually might be higher than that. It might be over 200. I want to say it's 212. I'll have to look that. Someone will Google it and knock my head off and correct me. That said, there are always exceptions to the rule. The UK is still dominated by two major parties, the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. The Conservatives obviously being somewhat similar to the Republican Party here in the United States, a conservative party that is making efforts to privatize everything, sell it off. They just recently tried to cut taxes on rich people again, and so on and so on and so on. And the Labour Party, which is akin to the Democratic Party here. Workers first, government spending to improve people's lives, raising reestablishing and resetting and more solidifying a progressive tax system where the richest people pay the most. And the biggest corporations pay the most, by the way. So we failed to talk a lot about corporations today. But there are probably... Okay, so then there's the Social Democrats, there's the Liberal Democrats, there is a Green Party, there's the... oh gosh, there's a couple others. There's probably there's probably 4 to 6 others that actually have members seated in Parliament. So that if as the situation is now, the Conservative Party has the majority of seats in Parliament, but not enough to have a clear majority, they must forge a coalition with some of these other parties. The problem with the parliamentary system that won't work in this country, because we were not set up that way, is that whoever the leader of that party is becomes the head of state. We will never give up the direct election of a president in this country, and nor should we. But that said, I think more of a parliamentary type setup in Congress is not only possible, but advisable at this point, I would say. But again, in the United Kingdom and in parliamentary systems throughout the world, the head of the party that has the most seats in Parliament becomes the head of the executive branch. We'll never do that in this country. We just won't. We just won't. But we can, small d, democratize the House by saying, if somebody gets you get a Green Party elected, you're elected. And treating these parties equally, allowing ballot access and allowing financing and making some of these parties viable. And if they're not viable because nobody votes for them, then I remember when Republicans used to believe in free market corrections and free market solutions to problems. Well, that's a political free market solution. If you create a party and you're recognized by the government and no one votes for you, well, then your party doesn't exist anymore. That stuff corrects itself.
Your friend was on there talking about, the gentleman was on there talking about, how he was, Tea Party member moving this way. The thing of the matter is, those things are not bad. But the point of the matter is, if you now, today, don't embrace, you're out. You have no voice. As a representative, you won't get elected. The people who elected him, there may be some people like me that go, well, now I don't have a voice. I have to go to the extreme, where if it'd be nice if he could have simply said, okay, fine, this has gone a little too far, and I'm going to pull into this third party. And if it was viable, where in our country, third parties have never really had that. They've been able to declare the problem, to bring the attention to the people. But if there was a place where I could go, and you and I talked about that, I'm not fully Republican, I'm not fully Democratic. Where do I go, Jeff? Where do I go? Here, I have no place to go. I become an independent, and I'm really not sought after. And neither would my independent representatives. But if you had a body, third, fourth party, there's got to be many bills in which either Republicans or Democrats are going to have to look at and say, we got to talk to these guys. This is going to split down a hair. This is going to be close. And look at them. They have a large number of people. Maybe not as large as ours, but they have a following. We can't ignore them. We're going to have to do something, and that forces compromise. But when you only have two parties left and right, either you're good, I'm bad, you're evil, so on, there's no compromise. None whatsoever. And a lot of people I talk to say, I get tired of politics. They don't listen. Now, they don't say Republican or Democrat. They don't listen. My opinion, there's only two parties. And you have to decide, do I go all the way this way or all the way that way? You're in the middle, they look at you like you're some kind of weird apparition that came upon the face of the earth, or you're not intelligent enough to make a decision, or you're confused, you're wonk, you're liberal, you're an extremist. I'm conservative on some sides. I'm a liberal on other sides. And I look at my issues and I decide where I'm going to stand on them. I don't immediately embrace an ideology that says, I'm a Republican, this is the way it's going to be, end of argument. We listen to your show, you listen to both sides. You're liberal, maybe, but I think you're very open. But, the thing of the matter is, in today's world, it's either, hey, is this Jeff guy? No? Oh, it's a damn Democrat. He's liberal. I ain't listening to that. Turn it off. Some of my friends say the world is black and white, and that's the way they decide things. There's no gray. And our whole government is built on gray. So maybe I'll move to some country up in Canada, make a new little Providence up there. But your discussion today was, I came a little late, tired from driving, but it was highly interesting. I'm definitely going to look up that gentleman's website.
Well, I think he's a good guy at heart. I mean, he was, he told you, he was the flame-throwing Tea Party guy when he started. He was Marjorie Taylor Greene before she, could spell her own name, if she still can. And he is, and now he looks like and now he's the calm one of the group. He's the one they don't want anymore. So, I mean, it really speaks a lot to how far the former Republican Party has drifted and has disintegrated, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, you can't, there's no point of simply saying, when I was younger, yeah, I followed Republican. That's what my father was, And as I changed, when I moved up here in central Pennsylvania, I knew that this was an extremely Republican area, so I stayed in it, figuring I could do things for myself, my family. I thought of maybe running for a small political office. And the reason I left was because you had to be far right wackadoodle, or you weren't a loyal member.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. I'm out. I'm out. And I'm one of 17 Democrats, along with my wife in Snyder County. Times when I think if there was I agree with you. You can't use a parliamentary system that you choose your president. But, you said about expanding the House. That's a great idea. Let's not do it by adding more Democrats, more Republicans. Expand it to represent more of the people. And that might be the central problem. A lot of people say government doesn't listen. May not be following their ideas. They got to either go one way or the other. If that was the case, you could go to an ice cream shop, Jeff, like we did last night, and it was either chocolate or vanilla, or get out.
Thank you, sir. I need to reset.
You go. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. 7:04 Eastern Time. We have entered the third hour of the Kennedy Effect live with you for January 9, 2020. January. Oh my God. Did I just say January? What? Let's try that again. Ignore what I just said. July 9th, 2023. I must be getting tired. I'm only 2 hours in. I used to do 4 hours and think to myself I had to shut up to end at 4 hours, and now I'm only 2 hours in and I'm dying up here. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what month it is. It's terrible. You are listening to the third hour live of the Kennedy Effect for July 9, 2023. Wherever you are across Facebook, please check out our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information, and to every single group, individual, public group, private group, page, individual, every single person that has tuned in wherever we have shared this show, wherever you have allowed us to share this show. Thank you, and thank you some more. We appreciate it very, very, very much. Thank you for allowing us to be part of your corner of the Facebook universe. Please come and check out our home group Facebook page when we are not on the air to see, hear, listen, the things, the video clips, the articles that we post there. The discussion never stops at That Other Side of Information on Facebook. That Other Side of Information is also the name of our YouTube channel. The channel, by the way, that we are live on right this second. If you missed any of the program, and I really hope you didn't, but if you did, or if you want to go back and listen again to my interview with Representative Walsh, new friend and member of the Kennedy Effect family, go to our YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. After we are done, the video will stay there. You can go back, listen to it in bits, move the red dot back and forth, re-listen to things. Did he really say that? Yes, I probably did. You can check it all out. YouTube.com/That Other Side of Information. We, of course, are active on Twitter at That Kennedy Talk. Email thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Instagram, Patreon, and TikTok are all labeled That Other Side of Information. To our brothers and sisters at Hot101.net, thank you for allowing us to be part of Hot101.net. It is always good to be surrounded by family, and we are happy to be part of the Hot101.net family. If you don't listen to Hot101.net, you should. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all around the planet. If you can connect to the internet, you can listen to Hot 101. Our name is our web address, www.hot101.net. You can listen on desktops and laptops and tablets and phones. You can Bluetooth it to Bluetooth speakers, headphones, earbuds, Bluetooth it in the car, and you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. But you don't need to go to the website to do it. Use our apps, Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn radio app, and you can listen to hot101.net. And of course, our friends at the TCP Media Group, big congratulations to Marquise Lipton, who started a brand new show at NPR Public Radio in Harrisburg just this past week, I believe. I have that right. Find him and listen. He is a friend. He is one of the leaders of the TCP family. They were kind enough to have me on their show while I was out of work. I didn't get to do it enough, unfortunately. I would have loved to have continued to go back. What a beautiful, beautiful experience that was. But even though the morning show doesn't go like it used to, it's still a very, very important place. TCP is still a very, very important site and community for people to come together and to stay informed, and I hope that you will check them out as well. We also need to mention our sponsor, and they are on the crawl now as well. I have a very long crawl. Actually, you really do need to read it to stay caught up on it. And that, of course, is the PayGive app, www.paygive.org. Go to the PayGive app, download it, open it up. It's extremely easy to use. You can make cash purchases of gift cards and the like to the biggest, finest retailers in the country. And a portion of that transaction can be designated by you to go to the organization of your choice, like the American Lung Association, American Heart Association, the Red Cross. There are children's charities in there. There are animal charities in there. You can determine where your portion of your purchase goes. And it means the more cards you buy, the more purchases you make, the more the charities that you designate make as well. You can also even use the PayGive app to give money to candidates. You buy a gift card for Home Depot, a portion of the transaction goes to a candidate of your choice. It is democracy through capitalism, if you want to think of it that way, I guess. Democracy through capitalism. You have to buy things anyway, so why not take a portion of that and send it to a place of your choice? You might not think that you have the money on a day-to-day basis or in your monthly budget to say, I'm going to give $100 to the ASPCA. But I know I have to shop at Amazon, I know I have to shop at Home Depot, or I have to shop any one of 1,000 other places. I can buy gift cards from PayGive, and I can give a little bit of that money to the ASPCA. I might not be able to write them a check for $100 every month, or even for $50. But every time I make a purchase, I can make sure that a couple pennies goes to them, and that all adds up. The PayGive app, www.paygive.org. The Pay-Give app. You have to pay for things anyway. Why not give while you do it? Phone line is open, 267-227-9189. 267-227-9189. Phone line is open. Tell me what you thought of the interview with Representative Walsh, or just tell me what you thought of it. Tell me what you thought. Let it out there. Tell me what you think. I'm happy to hear it. 267-227-9189. Phone line is running across the bottom. What I'm going to do quickly right now. Oh, there we go. Let's see if I do this right. I don't know why that phone keeps doing that. It keeps blinking in and out. Not great. Not great when that happens. I don't know where you called from.
Can you hear me?
Oh, it's you. It's you. Your phone number didn't show up, so I didn't know it was you. Go ahead, sir. Phone line's yours. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, it was an interesting show today. Obviously, your guest, very cordial person, and yeah, we could have a intellectual discussion, but I wouldn't probably agree with most of what he believes in, and vice versa, I'm sure. But in any case,
but the important thing is that we have the discussions. We're not having them now. Largely in this country, we're not having them now.
Well, that's largely because the so-called Republican Party, their voter base is fascist. They will not listen. You could have God come down. You could have Jesus come down for these people and tell them the truth. And if it doesn't agree with what they believe, no, it's not the truth. That's just the way it is. So I don't think there's going to be discussion for the most part. Yes, there are some traditional moderate Republicans left. Yes, there are some traditional Democratic moderates left. But other than that, that we can have a discussion on issues, pros and cons. But other than that, no, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry, Jeff, it's not going to happen. And I have to agree with your main guest this week. I'm fearful for our country surviving as a republic democracy.
You are not alone. I think that my guess is, this is certainly a bit of a guess and an extrapolation of what I do know as fact, is that the folks who are not worried about it are the ones who want it to fail. The fact that, remember what Representative Walsh said, he thinks the number is above 40%. When you have more than, when you're approaching the halfway mark of a half of the population who no longer seems to care or be concerned about the health of the democracy, they're the ones that are most willing to accept the fascist authoritarianism that follows. And they're the ones that are probably most likely to be convinced that the democracy is still occurring because the people they voted for are in power. Even after, when those people are in power, they take the vote away, at least that's the people they voted for. It would seem to me that the people who are least concerned about the health of democracy are the ones that are very willing to see it disappear.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just individuals. It's also corporations. let's look at the beginning. The classic definition of fascism goes back to
Mussolini,
Mussolini,
who created the concept. Really,
it was a combination of corporatism with government, and there's too many corporations out there, especially ones owned by essentially one individual. There's many corporations out there that are owned by a certain individual that is anti-republic democracy. And we know who that is because he owns Tesla, he owns SpaceX, he owns Twitter, and the list is endless. They essentially control all those corporate.
Let me ask you a question before I forget, because I'm going to forget if I don't. It's a separate subject, so I hope you'll forgive me from taking on to a different subject. Did you, or were you feeling well enough that you went to any of the I shouldn't even say counter protests, the absolute flat-out protest against...
No, I did not go to any of the protest Mothers for Liberty.
Right.
There's a lot of reasons, Jeff. Yeah,
well, I don't need to. That's personal. I'm just wondering if you made it.
I have real problems walking, standing on my feet for a long period. Yeah,
that's exactly why I didn't go. My back is so terrible I couldn't even walk. So I certainly wasn't going to stand out there for hours at a time.
I have a lot of friends here in Southeast Bay that were there day after day. So yes.
All right, good. And there was a very good showing too. I think what I actually think that the protests managed to do is actually dampen the amount of press coverage that the convention itself was able to garner. Because if you cover the convention, you have to cover the protests. And because we, generally speaking, have a very lazy media, they didn't feel like covering both. Now, I know that there are right-wing sites and bloggers and, the Ben Shapiros and Mark Levins of the world and Alex Jones and all that who were thrilled to give this time, but the major news outlets did not. In fact, the most media coverage I found about it on a day-to-day basis was, I'm sure all of you will be shocked, The Guardian. Domestic sources gave it almost no attention. And that's a real disservice because I think people need to understand exactly what Moms for Liberty is about. They need to know who's funding it. Some of the same people who fund the Proud Boys and the Three Percenters and the Something Patriots. The Something Patriots and not New England Patriots either, but I forget their name now. These so-called militia groups, these private Trump army groups, some of the same people funding them are funding Moms for Liberty.
And the Boogaloo Boys.
But that's another. You're right. That's another one that I forgot to mention. You're correct. So to anyone who might be hearing the sound of our voices, Randall and mine, who were able to protest, stand in those streets, really hot, ugly weather as well, and who could physically do it, unlike us, God bless you for doing it. That's just my personal opinion. Other people might think, well, geez, that's all I read about for 3 days. Well, I imagine if you live in Philadelphia, maybe you read a little more about it. I didn't think the press coverage was terribly ubiquitous. I thought it was really, you had to search for it. You really had to search for it. And again, I only found it because I read The Guardian every day.
6 ABC here, they did a lot of showing the counter protests. More than showing people entering, like, when Trump came and DeSantis came and
our former UN ambassador came. The funniest thing was one of my friends posted on one of the group sites I have here. They posted a video of Trump's entourage on his way to the Marriott Hotel to attend and speak before Mothers for Liberty. Stopping, the two tourist traps for cheesesteaks in Philly across the street from each other in South Street.
Yep.
And there was this comment that people were coming to see Trump there, buy a cheesesteak, and then they saw the protesters there, and they all left. So that was good,
It's exactly why you protest.
Exactly. But, we're scared that they're like, who knows what they're going to do? Yeah, right. You got to laugh, man. You really got to laugh.
Well, sometimes you have to laugh, keep yourself from crying. But yeah, I got you.
Well, that's true, too.
I got you. Are you feeling any better? Are you breathing better?
So, man. This weather is just, oh my gosh. I'm just staying indoors.
Now, let me say this too.
On.
Let me say this too. That something that Randall did not just say, but he's alluding to it, and it's the truth. Something Kristen and I were talking about as we've been driving around doing errands and taking the dog different places and things like that. This smoke from the Canadian wildfires has not stopped. It may be less intense. It may be to a point where you don't smell it every time that you walk outdoor, but it's still here. We've had a couple of days here in the Lehigh Valley where there's been not a cloud in the sky. Sun's been out, hot, humid, and yet still kind of in the smaller valley, not the entirety of the Lehigh Valley, but these little dips in between hills is just what looks like fog. And it's not fog. So it has, and it's not just haze either. We all know what the haze looks like in the summer, when the humidity is really skyrocketing. It's smoke. But just because the sun isn't blocked from it, and that everything is this eerie post-apocalyptic orange glow, doesn't mean that the smoke has gone away. We're just not getting as much of it. These fires are still burning. The last, I will admit, is several weeks old, but the last statistic that I heard is that the Canadians were only fighting about 10% of the fires. They simply don't have the manpower, the person power, human power, to fight them all. The places
and they don't have access. They do not have access to physically fight the fires.
The places are too remote, and they can't get people to them. So they're simply left to burn.
Hundreds of miles from the nearest road.
Yep, they're simply just left to burn. These are fires caused by drought and lightning strikes. So the droughts are encouraged by man-made climate change. The lightning strikes are simply natural. But that said, some of these fires are not even being fought. So this hasn't changed. Just the wind pattern has changed. The jet stream is protecting us a bit. But this smoke thing is not over. It's going to be with us at least through the summer, I should think. Common sense would tell you it would be with us through the summer, unless they get significant amounts of rain in the fire area. Sustained rains, by the way, not just, a rolling through thunderstorm even, but sustained, probably days of rain. Nothing's going to stop it. Unless it burns itself out. And just because, like I said, the Lehigh Valley and Philadelphia and New York are not completely covered in smoke doesn't mean that there isn't smoke. It just means it might not be as bad that particular day. And that is why I asked you.
And then we've got, this was the 6th day in a row that the full world's temperature has set a new high record for heat.
Right. We have experienced, I believe, the last 4 days straight in the recorded weather history. Now, sustained, continuous global weather recording only began, I think, around the mid to late 1800s.
Yeah,
In the time that we have been recording that, we have seen the 4 straight globally averaged hottest days in the history of the planet in the last 4 days. There are places in Texas, in Arizona, Southern California, where the daytime temperature, Florida, where the daytime temperature for weeks now has been 100 degrees. The actual feel temperature is in the 120s. There are places in Southeast Asia, especially in India, where the daytime temperature is in the 120s. Not just what it actually feels like, but the actual thermometer temperature is in the 120s. There are vast swaths of area of this planet that are becoming uninhabitable. The human body was not meant to be outside and live when the daytime temperature is 120 degrees. That makes it all the more cruel and barbaric as to what Randall called about 2 weeks ago when the governor of Texas made it, usurped local control, that people working outside did not have to have water breaks in 100, 105, 110, 115, 120 degree temperatures, that they didn't even have to have water breaks. Think about that. Think about working outside, maybe as a roofer, a landscaper, paving a road, the kind of jobs where you need to wear full clothing. You need to wear sleeves and longer pants to protect your own skin from being damaged. And then put on top of it that it's 110 degrees. And the governor of your state said you don't even need water. You don't need a water break. You don't need time to go into the shade or to go indoors and regather yourself and try to reset your body a little bit. You don't need any of that. The hell with it. Stay outside. And so people are dying from it. Now, why the governor? I hope someone in their grief, as workers die in Texas, I hope to God. Now, certainly the attorney general isn't going to do it. He was impeached by his own party in Texas and is facing several federal counts. So he's not going to do it. But it would be nice to see in one of the few Democratic bastions in Texas, Austin, Dallas, maybe San Antonio. I'd like to see a local district attorney bring murder charges against the governor. Because God knows, if the parties were reversed, they'd be screaming up and down about local control and big government, and you killed this person. The double standard is just, it's mind-boggling. It's infuriating. But Randall called about this 2 weeks ago. He was right to call about it. We posted the article at that other side of information, but this heat wave has continued. It has not gotten any better. They have not seen any relief in Texas, and workers are dying because the governor doesn't think they should have any time during the day, just for 10 minutes every 4 hours, that they should not have those 10 minutes to get water, go inside, take a breath. It's fascistic. It's cruel. It's intentional. Go ahead, sir.
It's dehumanization.
It is very much dehumanizing. Yes, you were right. It's making those people look like interchangeable parts.
He's not a human being. DeSantis is not a human being. They are the epitome of what really strict interpretations of the Bible by fundamentalist Christians, they would be considered satanic. The way, and for most of us, myself as a liberal Christian, Jesus, man, Jesus was the most main part of God we could ever imagine.
I need to invite our clergy friends back on again for another discussion.
You need to get my buddy back on. You're right.
I do. I really do.
Need to get Kevin back on.
What else you got, sir?
Not much. Just here we are. We were in complete drought. We got less than a quarter. Here we got less than a quarter inch the whole month of May, and then it started in June, and it's just continuing up and down the East Coast here now. Just flash flood after flash flood. And there's a bunch here in the Philadelphia area today. Areas that had flash flood. So, my back ground level patio that's roofed over, I've got 2 inches of water on right now that ran off my backyard into it because of the incredible downpour we had here an hour ago. So yeah, the change in climate caused by global warming is just getting worse and worse. No matter where you are, it's either feast, too much rain, floods, hurricanes, whatever, or it's famine, drought, and more drought. It's total. The environment is total yin yang every other day. So I've got an older brother that's never lived back here. He's lived his whole life in Wichita, Kansas, and he's in really bad physical shape, but he just really does not care. He says, I'm going to be dead when it really affects the earth. Well, I don't know. I said that too, but I'm still fighting because I've got children and grandchildren,
Right.
And I've got friends and their kids, and I'm still fighting, man, for, I went to the first Earth Day, the spring of 1970, my senior year in high school, at Fairmount Park, Philadelphia. I went to the first Earth Day, and then it was the physical things. It was yes, the atmosphere from air pollution. Yes, it was the Coalinga River catching on fire in Ohio because it was polluted. That was the start, and that led obviously to EPA.
Signed into law by President Nixon, by the way.
President, I'm sorry?
Signed into law by President Nixon.
That's what I said, even by a Republican president,
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Because the Republicans back then and the Democrats back then, they worked together for the common good. They might have been enemies on this issue, disagree on this issue or that, but overall they came together and compromised for the most part for the good of the whole country. And that's gone. That went out the window. Started with Reagan. Anyway, my friend, I'm going to let you go, and hopefully somebody else will call in.
Well, hopefully.
That's all I can hope for every week myself. But thank you once again, and
of course,
I hope I hope you join me when I join in with the See Sergeant Mac show tonight at 9:00.
Oh, if I'm still awake, my friend, if I'm still awake.
I understand that. I understand that.
I know that sounds pretty sad that I can't even make it to 9:00, but I'm telling you, sometimes I have told most of you this before, my loyal, listening, watching family. Normally speaking, when I get done with this program, I am bouncing off the walls, especially when I think we did a good one. Occasionally, I kind of think there's a stinker out there, and maybe I'm not too happy with it, and then I'm not usually so ebullient. But normally, I'm very hyper when I get off the air, and that can last sometimes for a few minutes. It might last for half an hour. It could be a few hours. But I know I got to get up at 5:15 for work tomorrow. So sometimes, even when I'm bouncing off the walls, I will force myself to go to bed. And it's amazing how quickly I can fall asleep. So I usually am pretty wiped out when I'm done here. But I try to stay awake at least long enough to get the Villain's View shared to you at that other side of information on iThrive and on hot101.net to make sure that you folks can get to it. And I hope that you will. It's coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So there's probably going to be probably about an hour's space between us and them. Again, if more people called in, which is not a guilt trip by any means, I'm just telling you the truth. If we had a steady stream of callers, it would be easier to fill the 4 hours. And we could take you straight up to Sergeant Mac. I don't think that's going to happen tonight. It's 20 before 8, and it will probably end up at 8 o'clock. So you're going to have an hour off, but what that'll give you a time to do, get a drink, walk the dog, catch up on a show or something, make yourself a bowl of popcorn, and then sit back and get ready for the Villain's View coming your way at 9 p.m. Eastern. On Facebook, you can find it here, that other side of information, on iThrive and on the hot101.net page and group. And of course, the audio is around the globe at hot101.net. That's the Villain's View coming up at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central, 6 Pacific. The Villain's View. Sergeant Mac, a member of our program's family right here. In fact, we need to do a little crossover again with Sergeant Mac. He hasn't been here for quite a while. We need to bring him back as well. So, my friend, to you and the family, as always, please have a great week. Please take care of yourself. And I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too, Jeff.
Thank you, my friend.
And say hello to your better half there.
A much better half. I'm punching well above my weight, my friend. Don't think I don't know it. I'm punching way above my weight.
Hey, Andrew is a much pleasanter person than I am. That's for sure.
Well, then we're both punching well above our weight. That's all I can say.
I don't know how I got God blessed because I do not deserve it.
Yep, I feel the same way. Only took me 52 years. All right, brother. Cheers.
All right, brother. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.
Phone lines open, folks. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. We'll take you for about 20 more minutes, 8 p.m. It looks like we'll probably wrap up unless we have a flood of calls. We'll carry you as long as we can. We are allowed to be with you right up to 9 o'clock. But if we don't have any calls or anything like that, then we'll probably say goodbye to you at 8. By the way, live at 8 o'clock. I know this is probably, you should be listening to hot101.net, but that said, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox Sports 1, the United States men's national football team, soccer team, is playing Canada in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I will be watching that. I don't think I'll make it through the whole thing. It'll be on until 10, but I'm going to try. A couple of the articles that we posted this week at that other side of information. From CNN. So I told you I do more than just The Guardian. From CNN. The largest offshore wind farm to date in the United States has been approved by the Biden administration off the coast of New Jersey. New Jersey is simply a state that doesn't get the credit it deserves. It's always the butt end of a joke. It's Philadelphia or New York, and you drive through it. And a lot of that's true. Be honest, yeah, some of that's true. But it's also a state that a lot of other states could learn from, including Pennsylvania, by the way. When completed, the Biden administration estimated that the New Jersey project will generate about 1,100 megawatts of clean energy, which could power over 380,000 homes. This is not rocket science, folks. Put a wind turbine out in the ocean where the wind is constantly blowing and you generate electricity. We know how to do this. This is not rocket science. I would go back to something that we talked about with Representative Walsh. Remember what John McCain said in the year 2000 when he was running for president? And somebody asked him, isn't all this climate change stuff just a bunch of bunk? And he said, okay, let's assume you're right, that it's all fake. The whole thing's fake. There is no climate change. Wouldn't you rather put solar panels on your roof or wind turbines down the center of the country so that we could stop buying oil from the Saudis? And he was right. Now, by the way, climate change is real. Advanced solar activity is real. But so is the promise of clean energy. We know how to do this. We know how. Gosh, it goes back to the founding of the country when we built mills, grain mills on creeks. The water pushed the wheel drove the grindstones together, the millstones. Clean energy. We know how to do this. Let me see. Some of the other things that we posted this week. Okay. The oil, here's a shocker. The oil industry working against disclosure. What a surprise. There are two bills in the California legislature that would require corporations to disclose more information about their greenhouse gas emissions and their efforts to fight climate change. The oil and gas industry is spending millions of dollars to kill both of them. This was posted 4 days ago by me from The Guardian. If the oil and gas industry believes that climate change is fake, which is what they tell you, even though they've known about climate change since the late 50s, 1950s, then why would they bother with these two pieces of legislation? Why would they want to kill them? They want to kill them because they know they're guilty. They know they should have been spending money on green energy and didn't because they were lazy. They know they are pouring trillions of tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, some of which completely unreported and unregulated and illegal. And they claim to be fighting climate change while doing nothing. How many months did we watch commercials from ExxonMobil about how they were working on algae as a biofuel? Okay? And in the commercial talk about their decades of work on it. So where is it? The truth is, they might have been spending money on it, but the goal was never to accomplish anything. It's just drill, baby, drill. And then when the wells run dry and everything around the well is poisonous, walk away from it and leave the taxpayers to pay it and clean it up. The democratization of cost, the privatization of profit. Also, one of the most disturbing stories of the week, or at least one that really should have disturbed you. And if you didn't see it, if you didn't read it, you desperately need to. Especially in a week where the Supreme Court took a shot, where the Supreme Court decided that race could no longer be a determinative factor in college admissions. When Justice Alito argued in his opinion that the Constitution in and of itself does not mention race. Oh, by the way, the 13th and 14th Amendments, the amendments during and following the Civil War. What the Supreme Court has turned into, by the way, in my opinion, and here's something that I hope Representative Walsh will come back and talk to us about. The Supreme Court has begun to take cases where it already knows how it wishes to rule. They knew they wanted to get rid of affirmative action for college admission. They knew they wanted to overturn Roe. They knew they wanted to stop the Biden administration from providing student debt relief to millions of students in this country. Those decisions were already made. They're now working backward from that. They're not listening to the cases, to the facts, to the law. They already know how they want to rule and are taking on the cases to work backward from there. We know that the sum of the math problem is 100. Now we're working back to figure out whether it was 50 plus 50 or 25 plus 75 or 10 plus 90 or whatever it means to get to 100. And that's what these Supreme Court decisions and the written decisions behind them have turned into. We already knew we were going to do this thing. I'm trying not to sneeze. Oh, I got an itch up there right now. They knew they wanted to overrule these things. They knew it. They probably decided it years ago. They were just waiting for the right case so that they could build the right justifications to do it. And in the idea of overturning Roe, the Dobbs decision, comes an article I posted, I think, 4 or 5 days ago. Shocker, from The Guardian. I should put my glasses back on because I can't read it. Hey, now I can see. Not so bad. Maternal deaths across the United States, have more than doubled over the course of 2 decades, with most deaths occurring among Black women. This has to do, and you might say to yourself, well, Dobbs has only been overturned for a year. I understand that. But state and local efforts to restrict women's reproductive health access have been going on for decades. And as more and more people have become completely unable to afford any health care at all, this is the result of all the Western industrialized nations on Earth, the so-called first world nations. The U.S. we're number 1 in maternal deaths. More women die giving birth in this country than any other of the so-called first world, the Western industrialized countries. You might have a larger rate in Haiti or Jamaica or in the African nations or in some of the rural tribes of Brazil. But of the so-called first world, we are the leaders in women dying during childbirth. The findings were laid out in a new study published on Monday in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Researchers looked at material I'm sorry, I read that wrong. Researchers looked at maternal deaths between 1999 and 2019, but not through the pandemic, for every state and for 5 racial and ethnic groups. Researchers found an estimated 1,210 maternal deaths in 2019 compared with just 505 in 1990. The toll was not distributed equally, with some racial and ethnic groups faring worse than others. While black mothers died at the nation's highest rates, the greatest increases over time were seen among the greatest increases. Now, listen to what we're saying. Black women died at the highest rate, but the highest increases of death over time were seen among Native American and Alaska Native women. In other words, the poorest and the most marginalized. And that's the truth of that. I would like to end on a hopeful note. Again from The Guardian. This is from 5 days ago. Forgive me for sniffling. I'm getting stuffy and I'm trying not to sneeze in your collective ears. On June 1st, a gaggle of press... This is an article I posted 5 days ago written by Alice Herman on Tuesday, the 4th of July. Headline, "You're able to vote now," quote unquote. Minnesota Democrats passed raft of progressive reforms. The state was one of a few to secure Democratic trifecta in 2022. Since then has passed abortion rights, along with voting rights and democracy reform legislation. Let me just give you the first paragraph or two here. On June 1st, in front of a gaggle of press, Kevin Reese signed his voter registration papers, a possibility that felt remote for more than 14 years he spent locked up inside of a Minnesota correctional facility. In prison, Reese thought constantly about what it would mean to leave. He formed a group that met weekly to talk about what it would take to get out and not only be okay, but to transcend and be able to live our dreams. The men talked about the responsibilities that awaited outside children poll taxes. In 2013, Reese said they began to focus on one concern in particular, voting, and restoring the right to vote to other formerly incarcerated Minnesotans. Minnesota was one of a few states to secure a Democratic trifecta in 2022. Democrats in Michigan, Maryland, Massachusetts managed the same, but it is the only state house to pass such wide-ranging reforms in one legislative session. The liberal trifecta is a first since 2013, when Democrats controlled the state house for just one session. Minnesota should provide a blueprint for what can be done around the country, and it should show people that when Democrats are in full control, what they can do: expand voting rights, protect women's health, and make just generally a more fair and equal society. Now, we don't always do that. We fail sometimes. The fact that the Supreme Court is how it is in part a Democratic failure. The court should have been expanded. Federal district courts should have been expanded. Appeals courts should have been expanded. President Biden is worried about expanding the Supreme Court because it might be politicized. That happened when Jerome Powell was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Nixon, after telling the billionaires how they need to get in to the political system and buy it all, and then helped rule in a way that made that possible. The Supreme Court has been politicized for 60 years. And in some ways, it's been politicized long before that. Republicans, when Republicans were real Republicans, during the Civil War, prevented Andrew Johnson from appointing new justices after Lincoln was assassinated by restricting the size of the court down to 5 justices because they didn't like Andrew Johnson, because he still had Southern slave racist opinions and beliefs. He ended the Reconstruction era. He ended the occupation of the South. He ended the last chance the North had to make the South truly free. The Supreme Court has been politicized arguably since it took upon itself the power of judicial review, a power that is not given to it in the Constitution. The Constitution does not say that the Supreme Court will be the arbiter of what legislation is and is not constitutional. That's Congress's responsibility. It's a power it took upon itself. But Minnesota shows us, at least, and I respect Joe Walsh to say that he doesn't agree with me. Nobody in the world has to agree with me. You don't have to. You should. Because generally I'm right. I talk about history and science and facts. I don't make stuff up out of my head. So he doesn't agree that the Democrats are the only party trying. But that's my view. The Republican Party is done. It doesn't exist anymore. And Democrats are the only ones trying. And I respect that Mr. Walsh doesn't agree. I happen to think he's wrong. I think we're the only party trying. But even then, arguably, we're not trying hard enough, and we're not getting enough done when we do have power to get things done. Minnesota shows us, Michigan shows us that when we have the power, we can get things done. And they actually show why we should have the power. 7:58. We leave you in 2 minutes. I want to say thank you to everyone involved in the program. A special shout to our associate technical producer, Lynn Dare, and to our technical producer, George Dare, who could not be here tonight. They have some things going on, some sad things. They are okay, but there's an impending loss coming, and they have been, as they have been to me for many years. George, I genuinely believe it was 20 years now, if I'm not wrong, because we met shortly after we moved to the Morristown area. So we're coming up on 2 decades, if not past it. Who's been nothing but a brilliant friend to me, is providing that same brilliance to another gentleman who's fighting cancer. And George is fine, but he's being George. He's being the best friend anybody could ever hope for. And I had been fortunate enough to have his friendship and Lynn's. So they couldn't be here this week, and he really wanted to be. He wanted to be here with Representative Walsh, but he couldn't be. But I hope that George will return soon. It is my continued hope that we will get these technical glitches worked out soon. I will freely admit that I was the one who was a little bit on the lazy end in the last 2 weeks. I just didn't want to sit in front of this computer for hours and try and slug through it. So that's on me, not George. For everyone at hot101.net, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, just everybody in the hot101.net family, thank you for allowing us to be part of the hot101.net family. It means the world to us. For everybody at the TCP Media Group, and great good luck to Marquise and his new adventure at NPR there in Harrisburg. For please remember the PayGive app, www.paygive.org. You have to pay for things. Why not give while you do it? For April Riddick, and of course for my way better half, Kristen downstairs, and I think you heard Daisy the dog, who continues to recover at an incredible rate. She's darn near completely back to normal. Not perfectly back to normal, but darn close. She certainly has her energy back, that's for sure. And of course, to our guest, Joe Walsh, a new friend and member of the Kennedy Effect family. And we look forward to him coming back to see us again. And again, I don't want to exaggerate it, but I literally just sent a DM to him through Twitter would you ever consider coming on our show? He's like, yep, sure, no problem. Let's work out a date. And true to his word, he was here tonight. And it really means a lot. I hope more people would follow his lead. Not just like, I just hope a lot more people would follow his lead. People who are in office, former office holders, regardless of your party and political position. I wish they would follow his advice and come here. Bettina mentioned a couple times in the chat. I should talk about her. She mentioned during the interview with Representative Walsh that the Electoral College does not represent the country. She's correct. It's a vestige of slavery, and it needs to be taken and be dealt with. That education is a problem. It is when you stop teaching civics, people become less involved in government. She received a letter for DeSantis looking for a donation. Interesting how a fascist wants the people to support him. And she mentioned that change starts at the local level. She's 100% correct. Change starts at the local level. You can be part of that change. Remember the other phone number that we always keep behind us here, 202-224-3121, the Congressional Switchboard. Call your representatives and tell them what you think. And I'll tell you what's really powerful, call them when you agree with them. We support your vote on this particular measure. All those calls are recorded, and I don't mean voice recorded. Who called, where you called from, what you said, how you felt about a certain thing. All of that is recorded on paper, the old-fashioned way. So do it. I think that's all the damage we can do for 1 week. That's 3 good hours in the book. The Kennedy Effect is scheduled. We are scheduled to return to you next week. No scheduled guests as of yet. What a surprise. What a surprise. No scheduled guests as of yet, but we intend to be back here with you next week. That would be 9/7/16, July the 16th. Sunday, July 16th. So for now, go watch the U.S. play soccer. Root them on against Canada in the Gold Cup. And I will see you next week. Until then, please take care of yourselves and each other. I think that's it for us. I need to do something quick, technically, so I know when we're done. There we go. I've done all the damage I can do for next week. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you on the 16th. Take care.